Επίτροπε, προχωρούμε στον κύκλο των ομιλητών.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Now we come to the speakers for the groups. For the EPP, Mr. Foulas has the floor. For 2 minutes, go ahead.
Συζητάμε εδώ ένα πολύ σοβαρό θέμα για το οποίο θα πρέπει να κάνουμε.
Well, this is a very important topic. I want to say the following on this issue. This program has weaknesses. Some people exploited those weaknesses, and those responsible have been suitably punished. But there is a program that has been used by certain countries, such as Cyprus, to tackle the economic crisis. Cyprus was used as a sort of test case. There were different cuts and reforms that were made back in 2013. Now, the program was then ended, as you said, Commissioner, when it was clear that it had been exploited and exploited by organised crime. Those people who exploited the system have to assume their responsibilities. Some people, though, are trying to negatively play Cyprus and its people. We cannot forget the Turkish aggression in this situation. Obviously, we have to bring those to justice, those who are responsible, but we shouldn't punish a whole people for this. Thank you.
Για την ομάδα των Σοσιαλιστών και Δημοκρατών.
Thank you very much. Next for the Socialist and Democrats, colleague Ainuluma.
A new plenary, a new debate around money laundering and the tax scandal. This is really a very bad trend, and at the same time our voters, they are asking just for one thing: a more fair tax regime where everyone pays its fair share, and a society where money laundering cannot be a way for criminals to have a fast track to land in Europe. Golden visas. Research shows that EU member states have attracted around 25 billion euros foreign investment over the last 10 years thanks to the golden visa programs. Investments are important, but so are our values. Today, even more than ever. The Cyprus leaks and the names it reveals are worth of discussion. With enough criminal money, you can buy a legal entrance in the European Union, and right-wing politicians in Cyprus seem happy to facilitate this. It's a disgrace for the whole European Union. The contrast and the indifference towards the burning refugee camps in Moira cannot be bigger. I agree with the Commission that this seems to pose risks for the Member States and for the Union, so it must be ended, this habit. In an equal Europe, there should be no room for golden visa programs. EU passports and visa are not a commodity. Therefore, Council Presidency, Commissioner, I urge you, get your acts together. Let's ban these programs completely. Let's make Europe a better and safe place for ordinary people, not for criminals.
Σας ευχαριστώ για την ομάδα Renew.
Thank you very much. We have Mrs. Intveld for 2 minutes.
Mr. Chair, and thank you, Commissioner, for coming here and for starting the infringement procedures. I think that is most welcome, and we knew that it had been in the pipeline for quite some time. However, this House has been debating the problems with golden passports since 2014. Why did it take so long? Why did the authorities wait so long to intervene? Why did we have to wait for brave journalists to uncover the scandals that we all suspected for a long time? And some of these journalists have paid a very high price, the highest price as we know. But journalists are not responsible for law enforcement. The authorities are, and the authorities are failing. Now, those who have a legitimate interest in investing in the European economy can do so without problem. And no golden passport nor a golden visa scheme can ever really be clean and legitimate, because due diligence that relies on cooperation with the Russian and the Chinese and the Saudi authorities, frankly, can never be watertight, and I'm being polite here. And despite the fancy names of the schemes, you know, residency by investment sounds nice, huh? It evokes these images of villas and yachts and what have you. In reality, they're just a golden backdoor into the European Union for criminals. Criminals. It's not investment, it's criminal money. Now, we need a full ban, and we're calling on the European Commission, not for the first time, to propose legislation. And I'm proud to say that at the initiative of my group, Renew Europe, the LIBE committee is going to draft a legislative initiative calling for a ban on golden passports. But of course this is national competence. You know, national governments cannot sell what is not theirs to sell, and that is EU citizenship. It isn't theirs. They cannot sell it. So our governments, is the Council finally also going to take responsibility, or will they continue to knowingly facilitate criminals? And the final question, Commissioner, will you also address, let's say, the legacy? Those who have already received a Cypriot or Maltese or other passport, will there be a second screening to see what kind of people we have actually elevated to the status of EU citizen? Thank you.
Σας ευχαριστώ για την ομάδα Ταυτότητα και Δημοκρατία.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Bild, for the ID Group.
Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. First and foremost, I'd like to say I'm very pleased to be able to speak to you here from the Parliament in Strasbourg. Hopefully, in the near future, we'll be able to come back here regularly. Now, should we be surprised about the Cypriot golden visas? Because the false acquisition of passports or residence is only for nefarious means. Montenegro is still at the head of the list for the next European enlargement, and it shows that the Commission's indifference to a tangible security threat. We've seen Pakistan leaders in fake passports and fake documents. They have received over 4 billion EU aid since 2014. We deplore the impacts. We are supporting certain states, and there's also those who clearly support Islamist terrorism. These visas are just a business, so they have an impact on migration and makes it possible for Bosnian visas to be sold to Pakistan nationals, whereas all nationals from this country would be suspected of terrorism.
Thank you very much. Mr. Giegold from the Greens for 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, President. A European passport is one of the most tangible results of European cooperation. It grants rights to anyone who has it, and for that reason, this right and this passport should not be sold. EU passports decide who has access to our citizens' rights and who doesn't. And if this decision is taken according to the purse, rather than the person who's going to integrate into our society, live and work here, then it isn't the principle of European law that prevails, but the principle of mafia. And for that reason, it is unacceptable that citizens and citizens' rights are up for sale. It cannot be the case that a single country decides who gets access, and then that person can enjoy rights in all the countries of the EU, because that way individual countries are putting millions into their kitties that lead to consequences across the board in Europe. And for that reason, it is unacceptable that the European Commission for years has done nothing. Conversely, I would like to thank you now for your initiative. These infringement proceedings should have been done a long time ago. You're finally doing it. That's good, and that is right. But you shouldn't just be targeting the sale of passports, but also golden visas. For example, the Portuguese programme in the last 8 years has attracted investments of 5 billion, selling 25,000 golden visas that sometimes lead to citizenship. So we should not close our eyes to that. So, Commissioner, please do not allow for double standards here. Visas should also not be sold, not just passports. That's why this Parliament should table a legislative proposal where we call upon this ban. Commissioner, please update your data and the programmes, because the current Commission website doesn't give much information. Furthermore, this isn't just my passport, it's from my colleague Neumann. She lent it to me free of charge.
Thank you very much for the ECR, Mr. Brzezinski.
Thank you very much, President. There is no place in Europe for criminals, dictators, etc. And passports and visas must never be a commodity. However, for some member states, it is a very lucrative business. For Cyprus, it's 5% of their GDP. Spain, 96 million, Greece over 200 million euros of revenue. This procedure is a danger to our society. There are reports, for instance, by the Al Jazeera TV station to the effect that Islamist militants have it very easy to get to Europe due to such schemes. You can buy a property in Cyprus for a few €100,000. In Malta, the relevant amount is €300,000. This is as much as you need to acquire EU citizenship, allowing you free movement throughout all over Europe. Therefore, we absolutely need thorough checks and controls of the applicants. Thank you.
Thank you very much. For the GUI, Mr. Georgiou has the floor for a minute. Mr. President, the European left were very hesitant when it came to this programme right from the start. We were very concerned that money would be lost through criminal activities or tax evasion. GUI would also like to say that there's no real certainty that this money was given out for social programmes. I think there has been real inequalities because of that. I come from Cyprus myself, and there's a double duty here, really, for me to emphasise these programmes need to be ended. It's not transparent. It's being misused when it comes to selling these EU citizenships. This is really a problem. We're getting criminals from all over the world coming to the EU because of this. If you look at the ordinary people of Cyprus, they know that this programme is unfair. So I think there are huge problems with this programme and the way that the Cypriot government has handled this as well. They have not followed the recommendation of the European Commission and made the necessary changes. So on behalf of the whole of Cypriot society, we want transparency and we want strict action from the Commission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes the spokespersons for the groups. Now, Madam Ferrara, 1 minute. For years now, the European business of passports and golden visas is a phenomenon that's been well known and is growing. The Cyprus scandal is just the last in a long range. For a long time now, we've allowed various member states to make money on resident stays or citizenship, giving that a price, exchanging it for investment on the part of rich foreign nationals. This market is worth billions of euros, where there are no standard common rules. Criminals and persons involved in corruption can also benefit from this, and their money laundering. It's often the fruit of illicit gains. The European institutions for years now have been concerned about the national residency and investor programs. However, they only react if there's a scandal subject to journalistic investigation. That was what led to the infringement proceedings against Cyprus and Malta. The EU cannot tolerate rights and values being put up for sale, allowing criminals from third countries to get passports or visas with which they can freely circulate in European territory, with terrible consequences for internal security and flagging up huge gaps in the fight against organised crime, money laundering, corruption, tax evasion and avoidance. The EU has a duty to put an end to these shortcomings and call for transparency and rigorous controls, thereby regaining credibility and cooperation between member states, and also closing the borders to these criminals based on finance. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now Mr. Lennertz, 1.5 minutes.
Ja, dank u voorzitter. Gouden paspoorten, het klinkt...
Thank you, Mr. President. Golden passports, it sounds something nice, something that might be created by Charlie in the chocolate factory. But rather than this being a prize, we're seeing it's a prize which is being bought. It's something which is bought, and it's not money for the European Union. In no case can we talk about in no case can we talk about golden passports. If we just need to use the real name. We need to call them false passports, criminal passports. And lots of people come from all around the world, and there's huge risk, tax evasion, corruption, money laundering. This is what it is. It is financing criminality. They are criminal passports. These are things that we're trying to fight against in the European Union. It's good that the Commission is finally taking action, and also infringement proceedings against those member states that still have these schemes is not enough. We need more measures, so that we need to ban, completely outlaw a golden passport scheme in the EU. An EU passport is a right, it's not a commodity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tang.
Good morning, everybody. Over the years, millions risked their lives to gain an EU passport. If they only had 20 million, in fact, for that money, Cyprus would have welcomed them with open arms. In fact, Cyprus welcomed some of the very same people responsible for others fleeing their home. They welcomed the cousin of Assad, they welcomed the associates of Hun Sen, the dictator of Cambodia, and they welcomed known criminals and gave them safe access to the entire EU. So the EU is fully justified in taking action, and I applaud the Commission infringement procedure. Better late than never. But these alone won't do the trick. Criminals looking for a safe haven in the EU will find our weakest spots. Today, Cyprus and Malta. Tomorrow, Montenegro and Austria. That is why we need clear minimum requirements for citizenships and for residency. This means an end to fast-track procedures. This means at least strong anti-money laundering safeguards to ensure funds were legally obtained, and this means clear requirements for the kind of investments allowed, investments that indeed require you to actually be here. Most of all, instead of handing passports to criminals, I'd say we save our passports for their victims. Thank you very much.
Σας ευχαριστώ. Το λόγο έχει...
Thank you very much. Madam Pagasatantua for 1.5 minutes.
Thank you very much, President. Often we're told good news isn't news, but when we talk about a decision that makes things more difficult for criminals, for tax evaders, I think that is a good thing. I think in Spain people should know that the Commission is finally starting infringement proceedings against Cyprus and Malta for selling passports to people outside of the EU. Some of us were part of the Panama Papers Committee in the previous legislative period. It's not just good news, it's necessary news for us. It's not just about money and opening up the door to selling citizenship in this way. We have the issue of freedom of movement, freedom to set up businesses. It's unfair competition. You're helping criminals, dictators. It's toxic to our democracy. It helps networks of corruption. We're talking about different politicians, people accused of corruption. There really is no excuse when we look at what's come out of this scandal. We really need to review national systems, particularly requirements where there's no necessity for physical residence to get citizenship. If it's Bulgaria that should be sanctioned, if it's my country, whichever country it is, you have our support, Commission.
Σας ευχαριστώ. Το λόγο έχει για 1 λεπτό ο κύριος Ζήμ.
Thank you very much. Now, Mrs. Zimnock, 1 minute.
Der Handel mit
Trade with citizenship, as in Cyprus, Malta and other EU countries, is a gateway for criminals into the EU. According to Interpol, these passports, alongside money laundering, are very valuable for terrorists and international criminals who use these to be able to cross borders undetected. But a parallel migration policy in the EU is clear. Now, those who are rich come in, others come in without passports and then have different identities. But with the golden passports, that's also another way in. Both ways are illegal, but only one of them seems to bother the EU. The other one, the migration, seems to be allowed. And as long as the EU isn't allowed to get this to prevail throughout the EU, it's just hypocrisy. Trade in passports and entering the EU without a passport should both be banned. Thank you. Thank you very much. 1.5 minutes, Mr. Weimers.
Speaker, Commissioner Reynders, deciding who enters, settles, or becomes a citizen is a fundamental right of a sovereign state. But the Cypriot and Maltese golden passport schemes do not require a person to first live in the country before granting citizenship and the right to enter and settle in other European countries. The former Maltese Prime Minister's chief of staff was arrested last month as part of an investigation into a kickback for favourable passport decision scheme. To this debate, I'd like to add that the sale of visas is just as serious. Over 2 years have passed since 27 members of this parliament demanded an investigation into reports of mafia-style sale of visas. Papers that enable free movement in Schengen countries. These should be common concerns. The sales of passports and visas is criminal, it impacts us all, and it must end. Thank you.
Thank you very much. 1.5 minutes, Madam Universine.
Dear colleagues, our passports not for sale. I come from the country where hundreds of thousands of people have died because of the right to be a citizen of their country and today citizen of EU. EU citizenship is about a protection of European way of life. It is about the security of our people, about our defense. It is about duties of citizens. We must stop money launderers and other criminals abuse the existing system. we must stop the third states to exploit the system for their influence operations. Therefore, all EU member states must end all existing citizenship by investment or residency by investment schemes as soon as possible. I would also like to use opportunity and to draw Commission's attention to a security hole in the European visa issuance system, which enables third country nationals with hostile intentions to enter the EU. The abuse is possible partly due to the continued acceptance of non-biometric passports for travelers. I invite you to take immediate action to address this security gap in European visa issue system. Thank you.
Σας ευχαριστώ. Το λόγο έχει για 1.
Thank you very much. Now for 1.5 minutes, Madam Inshir.
Chair and Mr. Commissioner, as in a relationship or any other kind of union, the basis of a functioning one is called trust. Welcoming criminals into our European Union with open arms just because those criminals are rich is totally outrageous and means forfeiting that trust. Because regardless of what the Cypriot, Maltese, Bulgarian or any other government thinks, the access to one EU country passport also means the access to the whole EU with all the benefits that takes years for normal people to enjoy, even though they might have been exemplary habitants. This is not having a sincere cooperation, nor is it upholding the integrity of what an EU citizenship should mean. Convicted oligarchs and corrupt businessmen have nothing to do here in the EU. I'm glad that the Commission has at last started to be active on this matter, even though it has taken for a long time, too long time. But I also have a question on why has it taken so long time? And the second is also, why doesn't it include all the countries who have this kind of system in place? Referring to the infringement process, of course. There are many reasons of why one should be able to get an EU citizenship, but being rich and or an oligarch ain't two of them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bouchardé Villalba, 1 minute.
Well, thank you for bringing this debate so we can look at the inconsistency in the Commission. On the one hand, we have Poland, Hungary, etc., for not accepting false refugees who then chop people's heads off in France. And at the other hand, we have infringement proceedings against Cyprus and Malta for giving citizenship schemes for investment. Welcome to this disingenuous situation we have in the EU. 2,600 people have been brought into the Canary Islands in the past 2 weeks alone. Stop looking to see things in economic terms. Stop saying that we need thousands of migrants to pay pensions. It's not true. Nations are not country. Nations are historic communities and need to be respected. We don't want criminals in, but nor do we want those who to come in and fight us on the street in the names of jihad.
Thank you very much, Jambaski.
Thank you, President, Commissioner, honourable colleagues. The issue with golden visas and golden passports does matter to the EU. But what also matters to the EU is the inflow of migrants, whom we call refugees for the sake of political correctness. At the height of the migrant wave, thousands of Islamic fighters entered the EU. The extremism of leftist forces will result in establishing a caliphate in Europe. Let me remind you of the Chechenian citizen who decapitated the French teacher. He had a legal status in the European Union, the status of a migrant. We must give opportunities to honest citizens to find a job and opportunities for legal residence here. There are very stringent requirements for acquiring EU citizenship. a few sold passports are not a big issue. They can always be traced back. There is a bigger issue with tracing back illegal migrants and people who cannot call themselves refugees.
Εξ ονόματος της Επιτροπής, το λόγο έχει ο κύριος Reynders.
That concludes